Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so delighted you are here today. It is seldom that students and people get to listen to an archaeologist. So it is my honor to represent that entire community that works endlessly in the blazing sun of India, in fields that are so treacherous, to find a lot more about Indian culture. My name is Anica Mann. I'm an art historian and an archaeologist, and I have been practicing in this field for over 15 years in the form of curation, in the form of documentation, in the form of exploration, in the form of remote sensing for archaeology. And I'm so delighted to share what this field is about with you today. One of the most profound thoughts and quotes that spearheaded me into this field of archaeology was, it's not about what you find in archaeology, it's about what you find out. And that is pretty much the central point of all research methodologies of archaeology in India. I did history honors at Lady Shri Ram College, a humble college of Delhi University. After that, was most often asked the question, what are you going to do with history? Are you going to write books? Are you going to become a curator? What are you going to do? And I told people that I want to get into the field of archaeology. And as it is in India, archaeology is a field that most people ask, how will you get into it? How will you earn money? How will you do it? How does one even become an archaeologist? The only way to become an archaeologist is determination. And today, I want to tell you not so much about myself, but about a little known history of India. As children, we've always heard the term brain drain, that some of the smartest minds of independent India keep leaving India. What's that brought for India? Well, if you look around, the head of Google, and most recently, the head of BBC World, some of the top bankers around the world, even the Prime Minister of the UK, a country that colonized us a long time ago, is of Indian origin. And that's brain drain, right? Something that you could be sad about, that why have these people left India and not stayed in India? Well, let's talk about it in terms of an archaeological context. We've always heard about how several communities and several kingdoms and several types of imperial powers found their way into India. And I always say, India is a fantastic country. It has everything that the world has to offer. It has the highest mountains, it has a long coastline, it has the driest desert, it has a rich, vast repository of minerals, more so in Orissa. It has a plateau, it has tropical jungles, it has mangroves, it has rivers that feed every part of this country. The geography of India is what actually introduced me into history. I was a fantastic geography student. I loved that subject. I loved exploring, and it was this exploratory spirit of mine that brought me into the field of archaeology. I could not help myself but go into the hinterlands of states like Odisha, states like Bengal, states like Haryana, states like Kashmir, states like Gujarat, where you go to Dholavira. But I want to circle back to the concept of brain drain. While a lot of people were coming into India, and we've heard those stories, we had Alexander the Great who came to India. We had people who tried to come to India, lost their way and found another country. We had the British coming to India, we had the French coming to India, we had the Dutch and the Portuguese coming to India. But today I want to talk about how Indians also went abroad back in the very, very ancient period. If you look at the map of India, what does it look like? Well, when I sat as a little girl in my geography class, I always thought it looked like a bit of a mermaid, where Jammu and Kashmir is the head, you have Gujarat as one arm, you have Bengal and the northeastern states as another arm, and then you have the peninsular belt that look like a bit of a tale of a mermaid. And then you had places like Rameshwaram and Dhanushkodi that almost connected to Sri Lanka that looked like the Finns. You had the Eastern Ghats and the Western Ghats. Now, I want to take you back to 2000 BCE, before Common Era, when Indus Valley Civilization, which was the earliest civilization of India, existed right from Afghanistan down to Gujarat. This was a very early period, and these were very technologically advanced people. And these people didn't just stick to their humble cities. They were spread all across the Indus-Saraswati belt. When we were younger, we always heard about the Indus Valley Civilization. And now, it has come to light that that Indus Valley Civilization actually stretched across two rivers, the Indus and the Saraswati. The largest site for the Indus Valley Civilization happens to be in India. It is Rakhigari. It is largely unexcavated because most of the village lives on top of it. It is almost the biggest dilemma for archaeologists. How do we find out about this entire city? Because the city lives on, the village lives on top of it. And that problem will remain. But I want to talk about how the Indus-Saraswati civilization, I call it the first period of Indian industrialization. And these people were the representatives of the first degree of international Indians. Now, what do we know about the Indus Valley Civilization? I think it's the first chapter in all of our history books in India. We know that they had very well-planned cities, they had drains, they used bricks, they built baths. They were not very militaristic because we didn't find so many weapons, but they built huge cities. We all know about Harappa and Mohenjo-daro, we all know about the dancing girl, we all know about the priest, we all know about the seals. The seals are what were made and invented so that they could travel abroad. The one elephant in the room about the Indus Valley Civilization will always be that we do not know the language. But if we don't know the language, can we figure out and find out everything about them? Maybe not. But we can find out quite a bit. And who's helped us in this process? It's the Mesopotamians. The Mesopotamians actually called the Indus-Saraswati civilization, the people of Indus-Saraswati civilization, the Meluhans. And guess how they described them? They described the Meluhans living in these ideal cities with fantastic timber, which was one of the most prime objects of import, gold dust, carnelian beads, this orange bead that was even etched in India using very, very precise tools. Lapis lazuli, a gorgeous blue stone. And all of this was demanded in Sumeria, that is part of a larger Mesopotamian civilization, in Iraq, in Ur, in Yemen, in Syria. The people of Indus Valley Civilization not only went there overland, but built amazing boats. And their sensibilities were fantastic. They built big wooden boats, they built a port in Lothal, they moved along the river, they took birds on their ships, they used the birds for navigation. When you let a bird out in the sea, and if it returns, you know you want to follow the direction of the bird because it has found land and come back. This is how the first international Indians went and left their footprint all over the world. Yes, we don't know the language. And yes, most of the cities are lost of Indus Valley civilization. But they can never be forgotten. It is indeed the pride of India. And one of the most grand stories of these Indians that were so international. While they were international, did they colonize? I don't think so. They never did. That's one story I wanted to tell you about how Indians that went abroad left an indelible mark. And there was an exchange of culture, there was an exchange of goods, there was commerce happening. But what was most important that I am finding out through finding about the Indus Valley civilization? What I am finding out is the history of Indian intellect. India's intellect, India's philosophical engagement. You look at the dancing girl, what is she wearing? Nothing, except 2 pieces of jewelry, a pendant and tons of bangles. You look at the priest, he's wearing a beautiful garment. Garments and textiles, especially in Orissa, are very Indian manufacturing industry. They were always desired. Wood in India was always desired. But that exchange, what did it lead to? That was also an exchange of the minds at the very earliest period. You have inscriptions in Mesopotamia that spoke about how the people, the Meluhans, were invited over there. In fact, they even imported dogs. Dogs were used to build larger civilizations. They were used for hunting purposes. They were used to maintain cattle, which was pretty much the wealth of a person at that particular point in time. So all I want you to understand and remember from the story of the Indus-Saraswati civilization, of the Harappans, of the grand old ancient Indians, is their feat in intelligence. Now I want to take you to another time period. This time period is between 300 CE, Common Era, till about 900 CE. Let's come to the western arm of India. The first arm of the Indus-Saraswati civilization was, the western arm of India, and now we're coming to the eastern arm of India. These 2 places where a lot of export of extreme Indian intelligence happened. What was happening in East India? You had more than 6 to 7 international grade universities that were started by the Guptas and that were completely made global by the Palas at the time. I bet everyone out here has heard of Nalanda University, Vikramashila University, even in Odisha, the Pushpagiri University that was even visited by Hyun Sang, who stayed here. These universities became such important centers of human intelligence that brain drain even existed back then. Scholars like Nagarjuna, Atisha, Dipankara, all of them were invited to places like Indonesia, Borneo, Sumatra, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, China, everywhere. And all of Southeast Asia, East Asia was wondering, what is going on in India? India had become a hotbed of philosophical and religious streams, knowledge systems that were so dense. Indus Valley civilization, we don't know what was the nature of religion they followed. We do know they loved textiles, they loved gold, they loved jewelry, they loved horns. But now, when the universities in eastern India, from Kashmir to the eastern arm of India, had developed, we knew Brahmanism had peaked, Shaivism had peaked, Vaishnavism had peaked, Shakta had come about, Buddhism and Jainism. It almost felt like India was going to be a Buddhist country at that particular point in time. The knowledge streams, the intellectual history of India is the biggest unsung heroes in my opinion. Very few people talk about that. And what it did at this very early medieval, late ancient period for the world. Do you do yoga? It's Indian. Do you meditate? It's Indian. Do you drink tea? A lot of it came from India. The religious footprint of India on the world without colonizing is something to be celebrated. Now one could call it brain drain, or one could call it sharing this intellectual history of India without anything in return. It actually carries with it Indian philosophy, no ego, no return, good karma, good dharma, spreading the message. That is what I find out about Indian culture once I practice archaeology. Nalanda, Vikramashila almost even had gift shops over there. Votive tablets, small stupas were things that these scholars coming from China, Japan, Korea, Cambodia used to come and take back with them so that they have something to remember. Now enough about Buddhism. Angkor Wat is one of the largest Hindu temples in the world. It was a Vishnu temple. It was a Vishnu temple that came about in Cambodia after 200 years of Shaivism. You find images of Durga, Kali, Mahishasura Mardini in Cambodia, in Indonesia, in Thailand. Such is the religious footprint of India in the early to the late ancient period. You in Orissa stand upon a very rich land where all of this happened, where scholars were thriving, so much that jealousy was breeding. Competition between religions were happening. The intellectual debates of Shankaracharya versus the Buddhists can never be forgotten in the annals of history. And that is something to be proud about. And I think that is why most people like us conduct archaeology. We indulge in art history. We take that forward into curating information dockets just like this talk for you guys. So I'd like to end this conversation by leaving this thought that archaeology is not about what you find, it's about what you find out. Thank you.